Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. I'm Robbie.
I'm Jason.
And welcome to the table. So excited to have you guys here. Episode number 31. It's going to be a great day. Jason, you want to give the caveat on how you're feeling headed into this how you're doing today?
For those listening, everyone's listening. You could be watching on YouTube and listening, or just listening. I apologize for my voice. I've been fighting a vicious cold for a number of days. It's rough today. I thought I was getting better because had that heavy weight on my neck and my head all weekend. But then we had like a big tournament, a B tier. My first ever B tier was this weekend for disc golf, and we were vending at it. And if we weren't vending at it, I wouldn't have played, Robbie. Like, there's no way. I was like, wow. I'm not playing. But because also, I didn't tell you this, last minute, I got pulled in to be an assistant tournament director for my course. So I was actually an ATD as well. And I didn't have to get certified, but I'm now officially a certified official. I went and took the test, took it one time through and passed. But anyway,
that's impressive.
Yeah,
impressive.
It is open book now. Like it probably was always open book. And so I had to go reference a couple of them. I don't know if I could take them without reviewing that. But having said all that, I would not have played this weekend because that's not, when you're sick, you need to rest. And I was out playing disc golf for 3 to 4 hours a day at Independence and Falling Creek, and then worked the last couple of days. So, but it's easy. The good thing is I'm a board game addict. And so I could be on the bed. You bring me a mic. I'm talking about board games, brother. And I'm not about to not do that. So I'm here for it.
That's fair. That's fair. We respect the hustle. So, speaking of board games, I'm going to start off what we've been playing lately, because mine is way less exciting than yours. Because my wife is at this point 32 weeks pregnant at the time we're filming this, and so she is my number one board game partner, who we can play with. And let me tell you, if I could, I'm going to have to figure out, I'm packing a quiver. Like I'm already building a quiver for the hospital, and trying to think of games that we can fit in, that can be played on a smaller table setting. Because I really have thought about, we have like this little tray, and I've thought about like taking games up to our room, since like she comes home, she's exhausted from work, and she usually is just like resting quite often. So we don't play a lot of games like just on the bed, but would love to know comments if you've got suggestions. Obviously, Jason, we can chat about that because I'm sure you've got some ideas of like smaller games that would work in that setting.
For sure.
So just looking at those, but I would say the biggest thing that I've been playing lately is Lorcana. I've been playing a lot of it. Had my first ever set champs, which was super fun. So there are in card games, TCGs, for trading card games, for those who are unfamiliar, there are sets of cards that are released. So for Lorcana, every 3 months, a new set gets released. And we're in the middle of set 5 when we're recording this. It's called Shimmering Skies. Mm-hmm. On the 3rd month of the set being out, so the last month before the new one comes out, they do set championships. So Ravensburger sends out these prize packs to the stores that are approved to run a set championship. You play a certain amount of like rounds, and then you earn points for winning like straight up, or winning like splitting your games, however it may be. And then the top 8 they move on to the finals, and then it's top 8, top 4, finals. And so I made it into top 8 on my first set championships, which got me a Mirabelle enchanted prize card that you can only get from playing in set championships. So felt really good. I have unfortunately sold my soul to the dark side, and I'm playing a deck that is really, really mean, according to a lot of people. So I said when I got into Lorcana, I wasn't going to be the Slytherin. I wasn't going to be the bad guy. And I've just fallen in love with this archetype that is discard. So Jason, you think from the standpoint of you like to play cards that do stuff, Lorcana has that. And my deck's entire premise is by like turn 4, you have no cards in hand. And you're just top decking. And every time you draw, I'm drawing. So
no, thanks. I'm good.
It's a dark time out there.
Actually, that's your Slytherin coming out, man.
Yeah, it's tough. I played against our friends Ryan and Abby. I played against Abby in the last round of locals last week, and she goes, "Robbie, I'm not going to lie. I kind of hated you at the end of our game." I was like, you know what, Abby? I respect that. I can understand why. So, and you can just see the joy that I get from that, which probably means that there's something wrong with me. So that's where I'm at in the trading card game world. And that, trust me, that dark side really comes out in today's game as well. But Jason, you had a special guest hanging out with you, one that's near and dear to me.
Yeah, I had the better Crawford. Is that right? Is that mean? Is that wrong to call John your brother
true.
the better Crawford?
Probably true.
So I had Robbie's brother was in town doing some work, and he reached out a few weeks ago. Said, "Hey man, you got a couch I can sleep on?" I got even better. I said, I got Robbie's bedroom that you can sleep in. So Robbie, it's his bedroom anyway. So John was in town, and John and I met a couple of times at Robbie's disc golf, his Patreon get together, the Birdie Fam reunion. And this past year, we actually got to play together anyway. Now we played the crew every single night. We talked about crew. We covered the crew. It was great. But with John being here, knowing he was a trick taker, knowing he was really good, we dived into the sequel to the crew called Mission Deep Sea. If you remember the basics of the crew, you have a set number of missions. It's just 1 through 50 or whatever it is. And here's the set mission. The difference from Mission Deep Sea is that you still have missions that have a threat level. And essentially, if the threat level is 4, you shuffle these cards. And on the back, it says for 2 players, 3 players, or 4 players, there's a number. And you keep turning it. So it's the back. You don't see the mission, the goal yet. You keep turning those over until you add up to exactly what your threat level is. So if your threat level is 5, you may end up having 4 cards, 3 1s and a 2, which is what happened to us. And now you have 4 goals for that game. And you still do the same way. Whoever gets the number 4 is the captain, and they choose one. It's the captain's always guaranteed to get 2. What's unique about this one is that if you only have 2 goals, the captain can pass. That means someone else, the other 2 are going to get goals. So if we read that correctly, the captain can pass. Now, there's also one other mechanism which you can all agree to pass a card to your left. Everyone passes a card to their left for that particular one. We didn't get to that point. Unsurprisingly, as usual, and John learned this, my favorite thing to say is, in a surprising turn of events, I wasn't the commander, because I was the commander once. We played 2 nights. We probably played 20 to 30 hands because we had one mission that was really, really hard. Like we had one, because some of the missions, for example, are win more pinks than greens, win more yellows than blues, win with exactly 1 yellow or no more yellows than greens. So in a 3-player game, that means the third person has to slough off somehow, but you still have to win the trick. And that was the hardest. Like we were trying to, and so inevitably the captain often would take that one because they had a better chance at it. But we went over and we just missed it by 1. It was that one just was stuck with us. And it was like 11:30 at night. And I'm like, I'm John. If you're ready to go sleep, John, we go. He goes, no, I'm good. And Liz was like, let's go one more. And finally got to be captain. And we just ran through the next mission like nothing. I was like, I should have been captain all along, So clearly I should have been captain. So
leadership issue, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. The fun thing is about that, there's so many different goals. Some are win the blue 4, win exactly 2 4s, win with the first and last trick, win the first 4, lose the first 4, whatever, right? Those are all those goals. So there's such a variety of goals that the crew is still great, but I will never really go back to the crew to play the crew Quest for Planet 9. I'll instead do Mission Deep Sea because it changes it up every single time, because your goals will be different as opposed to just, you always have a goal that's maybe win this first or last. It adds it up enough variety that it's pretty fun. So we went through 6 of the missions, and so it was fun. We had a blast for sure. I'm still the 3rd best. If among the 4 of us, I'm the 4th best. Is clear, right? Because but I did give him some examples of, because me, you and Elizabeth played so much that I did some mannerisms of making fun of you, and John's like, yep, I see that. Because when someone play a card, you just stop and go, It's like the Slytherin is trying to be really nice. John's like, I can see that. I was like, yeah, wouldn't mess up. And he's like, Robbie gets real quiet. If Robbie's quiet, something's wrong, because Robbie's not very quiet. And it was just, it's funny. So we had a good time playing the crew Mission Deep Sea. Super fun. Of course, we'll play it when you come as well. The other one we played, and I did this kind of sort of on point because John is getting back into D&D, basically role player games, right? And so we played Role Player, the game, which I played with Robbie, and we've talked about once as a game we played lately. The gist of it is it's dice manipulation. Dice, rolled out dice, you draft a die and placed on your board. And when you place on the board, it may let you do something else to another die, but you're trying to get the die to equal up to certain numbers. You have multiple goals with Role Player, and it's just it's so fun because I love dice manipulation. Even though I'm not a big dice chucking guy, I love dice manipulation games where you're taking the dice as it is. Castles of Burgundy, like we're eventually going to cover Castles of Burgundy, is probably my number one game right now because of I said this in multiple episodes now, but because of Board Game Arena, I love Castles of Burgundy. I just play it and play it and play it, and I just love it. So the dice manipulation side of it, selecting the die, putting it somewhere, and getting to do stuff. But man, the cognitive load in role player is so much. And for me, it's okay, but like, okay, you got this goal, you got this goal, and you got this goal, and you got this. There's just a bunch of stuff you're trying to go after. Whereas the game we play today, there's a bunch, but the actions are the challenging thing, but the goals are, okay, you got this or you got that are going to add up to your points. Whereas in role player, there's so many little things trying to make your die color match, trying to meet your individual goals for your attributes, trying to move here. So we had a good time. He enjoyed it for sure. It was, and I forgot, it's a game that you try to talk about, but it's super thinky because you're working through your die, because you can mess around with your die. It was good. Elizabeth won again, big surprise. So it was fun. I think John enjoyed it for sure. And we had a good time hanging out with John.
Dude, yeah, I'm sure he loved it. I haven't gotten a chance to catch up with him after his trip, but role player is one of those. Having played it, and like if you have any interest in D&D, I think if you love the character building side of D&D, that is one of the best. Like, it's such a good translation of a part of D&D that gets overlooked so quickly, which is when you're trying to build that character, you're rolling the die and you're like, all right, this is going to be their charisma. This is right. That aspect is really, really cool. I was actually watching this interview between two actors, and one of them had never heard of D&D before. And the other actor being interviewed, she is a dungeon master, and she was like, do you want to play right now? And it was this really cool interaction where he's like, what are you talking about? And he was like, and she said, well, I want you to imagine you're in the woods. You have a bow strapped to your back. You hear a noise about 20 feet away, or you hear a noise off in the distance, and it sounds like something really heavy snapping a twig. What do? And he was like, how far away is it? And she was like, let's do a perception check. And so you're going to roll to that. And like, you could just tell she latched onto it immediately. Like, she had him. And it's really well played. So role player, and once again, dice manipulation. So there is a lot of strategy that's involved. And then you also get kind of I talk about this a lot in dice games. Like, you get the relief strategically of like, sometimes you just don't get the rolls. Yep. And you have to be okay with that. Like, I like that RNG a little bit. So, but today's game has a ton of RNG, but not in the way that you would think with dice roll. It's so fascinating. We've talked about it on several episodes lately. And so we just felt like it was time to dive into it. So today we are talking about 5 tribes. Jason, you want to tell the folks what this game's all about?
Absolutely, man. The full name of the game, which very few people say it, but I keep getting reminded about it if I go to BGG. We all say 5 tribes, but it's actually 5 tribes, the Gens, DJINNS, Gens of Mancala. Released in 2014, which is interesting. I always feel like 5 tribes is older than that. I mean, it's still 10 years old, but I just feel like it's older than 10 years. So I take for granted that it's not that old. Anyway. That's an aside note there. Designed by Bruno Cathala, and we're talking about this before he came on the air. I didn't realize Bruno also designed King Domino, which we talked about, Spills de Jars winner. He designed Seven Wonders Duel, co-designed it with the original designer Antoine Balza, I think, of Seven Wonders. He designed Shadows over Camelot, an old OG game that is beloved, out of print, hard to find. I've never played it, but I know it's one of those ones that longtime gamers know it and love it really well, and a lot of newer gamers don't know it because it's harder to play it. In one other game, he's designed a lot, but one I'll highlight is a game called Sea Salt and Paper. Did I ever play Sea Salt and Paper with you? I don't think so. Not. It is super light game. It just came out like last year. It's too light to cover, but it's a set collection game, but it's super interesting. And the game and the cards have origami on them of animals, of sea animals. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I didn't realize I'll only put that on there for my own sake because I didn't realize he co-designed Sea Salt and Paper. Published by Days of Wonder. The base game is 2 to 4 players, plays in 48 minutes, 40 to 80 minutes. You can add an expansion to get to 5 players. Currently number 82 on BGG top 100. So, it's after 10 years, it's still in the top 100. That's pretty good. Five Tribes builds on a long tradition of German-style games that feature wooden meeples, the little worker meeples we love to play around with. In a unique my sickness is catching up. I will slow down. In a unique twist on the standard worker placement game, this game begins with a meeple already in place, and players must carefully maneuver them over the villages, markets, oases, and sacred places tiles that make up the Mancala. I guess Mancala is the town. How, when, and where you place these five tribes, i.e., these meeples, will determine your victory or failure. But as is common with Days of Wonder games, the rules are straightforward and easy to learn. Devising a winning strategy, you take a more calculated approach than the standard fare. Because for each of these moves, you have to carefully consider what can score you well and put your opponents at an advantage, and ideally possibly are at a disadvantage, and maybe you at an advantage later on. There's lots of pathways to victory, including the summoning of powerful djinns, which are cards you can buy during the game that could help your cause during that, to control this legendary sultan. That's the high level of it. The way the game is played is a little technical, so I didn't go on the high level of that, but we'll do it when we get into a little bit deeper discussion.
Yeah. So the setup for this game is it is a lengthier setup, especially for, I would say, a Days of Wonder game. Yeah. Like a lot of Days of Wonder games are very straightforward, very simple. Am I crazy in thinking Small World is also Days of Wonder?
Yeah, it's Days of Wonder. Yep, it's Days of Wonder.
Okay. Yeah. So when I think of Days of Wonder, I think of traditionally like this very fun, cartoony art. Is very, very common amongst them. Shadows over Camelot might also be a Days of Wonder game. But in this setup, the setup also creates the replayability right off the bat. This is one of the most replayable games that is a classic that you'll come across, because there are, like, based on how the setup lands, that can determine the early part of the game pretty heavily, and also have a very large influence on like how you're going to win, how you're going to go about this. So there are 5 types of meeple. We'll talk about that in the like actual gameplay. For the setup, there are a bunch of tiles. The board, there is no technical board. The board is tiles that are placed side by side. And these tiles have point values on them, as well as an empty space for you to claim that tile, essentially. And then there's a bonus for claiming that tile. Those bonuses can include going to the market. They can include straight up victory points. They can include the ability to purchase a genie. They can, and I'll substitute the word genie for djinn. For the rest of the podcast, just so you're aware. I don't know. I don't think that's a bad thing. We always call them genies.
Right, they're
I
genies.
think it's the same word in different languages. So the djinn cards, or the djinn cards, I believe is how you're supposed to actually say it. But Southern Robbie coming out here, Roll Tide. So the genies, you get the perk to buy a genie, and so you set all these tiles. So that's going to be different every single time. And then you have this bag of meeples. And there are 90 meeples in this bag. So you're going to pull 3 out of the bag and place them on a tile. And you'll pull 3 more, place them on a tile. And you do this all the way around the board. It takes a long time, because then there's also the randomness setting up the genies, setting up the market. Like, there's a ton of pieces that have to get set up. And when you're setting this up, the cognitive load that you're looking at, it never fails to amaze me how shocked people are when you're setting it up. And I'm just like chatting it up, because you don't really have, if you've done it a lot, you don't have to think about the setup that often. Yeah. But you're like, so I'm just chit chatting, pulling 3 out, making sure I got 3. Okay, drop. Make sure I got 3, drop. And I'm doing that. And I just watch as I set the game up for first timers. They're just like, what? Because you got the small market and the large market, and like it's so many pieces involved. But I love that there's so many pieces, because it really does. If you're someone who on these types of games, you love a strategy that you like to go with, that strategy 100% could not work based on how the board starts. And by the time your strategy comes into play, it's too late. You've already lost the game.
Yep. For certain. It's so true. Like, I hadn't thought about it. I take for granted how, because Liz and I were going to play it last night, but I didn't feel well. So it's literally still set up right here because I'm a little behind the scenes here. I'm actually on my gaming table when I record this. So the game is set up right here. So I'm looking at it. And for us, you and I looking at it, I was like, okay. And I'm already, I literally look at it for a second. I'm already devising my first few moves. But if you've never played it, you're like, holy crap, what am I doing? There's all these meeples and they're all different colored. And there's the, whatever, the merchandise cards on one side and the gen cards on the other. And there's a little track where you do turn order and there's coins and there's, you know, like, oh, wow, it can be very, very much overloaded. Overwhelming is the word I'm looking for sure. Because the movements themselves are the setup is there. The teach is where it gets a little challenging because the basics of the movements are you're going to take all the meeples from a single tile. No matter how many it is, whether it's 2 meeples or 7 meeples, you take all of them. And now you start moving orthogonally among other ones. And orthogonally basically means you're moving perpendicular. You can't do diagonal because your board is 30 tiles, 5 rows and 6 columns. So it's a perfect thing of 30 tiles. And as you move your meeples, you move to the next tile that's orthogonally adjacent and drop a meeple. Nothing happens with that tile. You drop the next meeple, you drop the next meeple. Once you get down to 1 meeple left in your hand, whatever tile you end up on, if there's other meeples of that color on that tile, you take those up and you take that action of those meeples. We'll talk about that in a second. There's 5 different meeples that take 5 different actions. The key about those movements is you can't go diagonal and you can't backtrack on yourself. So you can't go over one and automatically come back. That was a little loud. Can't go over one and automatically come back. But if you have enough meatballs, you can move back to the original spot you're at. But you're able to backtrack on yourself. And for newer players, it's hard to conceptualize that the move is actually very easy. The movement is super easy. But getting to the strategy of it is a little harder. But then like, oh, I want to come back here where you can't, or I want to go diagonal there where you can't. And you have to take all the meeples from where you're in. So that gets into your strategy. So the movements, once you figure out the movements are not that hard, then the game's like, okay. But like you said, the board, it could set up and you're like, I have no chance in this game with my basic strategy, but everything changes during the game. And by the end, I'm snapping people left and right with my assassins. Or you could try for that strategy all game and it never hit because you're playing with really good players who intentionally place meeples so you can't quite do it.
Yeah. In terms of the theming is, it's not a theme that like I really connect with and I can jump into. I think for certain audiences, this like Eastern from the desert like vibe is 100% there. Every single piece that is in this game fits the theme. You have markers to claim spaces. Those markers are camels because camels are there. You have palaces, and then I'm trying to remember what the other one is. Palm trees. Yeah. I was like, there's a 5 and a 10. I can't remember which ones they are. But they have like you have these. So those pieces are there. In order to pick your turn on the turn track, it is these like towers. I forget what they're called. It's not a ziggurat, but
I don't know.
I can't get around it. But you have these towers that you would think,
For our YouTube folks, I'm holding one up right now.
Yeah, it is this like straight out of Aladdin tower. And so you have this. But really where the game highlights itself is 5 tribes. So why is it called 5 tribes? There are 5 types of meeples in the game. And like Jason said, they're all 5 different colors. So you do this Mancala effect, which is such a cool mechanic for a basic game that lots of people grew up playing that just doesn't really show up in a lot of games. And I love when a board game brings in familiar mechanics. It's why when we talked about King of Tokyo, it's battle Yahtzee. Like, oh, I'm used to the Yahtzee mechanic. Okay, I can do that. Like I love when games just incorporate those the basic ideas, right? So in 5 tribes, when you land on the final space, whatever color you have, let's say I have a red meeple. When I drop that on the final space, I'm not going to pick up every meeple on that final space. I'm going to pick up just the red ones. So if I end on a space and the only red one I have is the one I dropped, I only pick up 1. That's That's the reality. So you want to combo these things to where you're dropping them in the right places. So you have assassins, which are red, and assassins can, based on how many assassins you pick up, you can move X amount of tiles away to kill or take out another person or another meeple. You can also use assassins to take out certain meeples that other characters have held onto for their board. You then have the elders, which are white, and the white meeples are used as victory points at the end of the game, or you can trade them in for certain effects and powers that affect the genies. So you usually, to get a genie, you have to trade in at least one elder as well as an additional elder or one of the servant cards. So you trade those in, you get that combo. The genies aren't even considered in the tribes. We'll get to them in strategy. The builders are these blue meeples that if you pick them up, you count the blue tiles that are around there, and your builders are a multiplier. So if I have 4 builders that I'm able to scoop up in the middle of a blue section, major points. The merchants are green. They allow you to go to the market and get more goods. And then the viziers are basically just straight up victory points. But it's also fun because the viziers are competitive to everyone else. So you score based on how many more people you have more viziers than. So if one person has the most viziers, they're going to get a crazy amount of points. But I somewhat only have to get enough. Like if Jason, Elizabeth, and I are playing, I only have to get more viziers. If Jason's going to win that race, I just have to make sure I have more than Elizabeth, because I'm still going to get points for that. How heavy do you want to go in on that? Like, do you want to make sure that you have all the viziers? You could even lock them into not getting points because you can ensure, and you can use your assassins to go take out viziers. The strategy of the meeples is, like with these tribes, it's where it really shines, because I think the more you play this game, this is where we talked about that basic strategy. The more you play the game, the more you all have a tribe that you tend to prefer to go for.
Absolutely. Definitely. I never, and if it sounds confusing, the action of those, it makes more sense when you see it on the board, because Robbie did a really good job explaining it, by the way. He hit everything picture perfect, but until you see it on the board, it doesn't quite make sense. Specifically the blue ones, the builders don't make any sense until you see the board, because those tiles have blue numbers on them. Some of them have, and they're randomly put out, and that's what you're multiplying by. The merchants don't necessarily make sense until you see the merchant row of the cards you can buy. But once you see it on the board, it all makes sense. A lot of little stuff there. And you're right. I don't typically go for genies. There's no right reason or wrong reason I don't. I don't typically go for genies. I am very much we should step back, because I realized I never said this. The way you win the game is having the most money at the end of the game. Everyone starts with 50 coins, $50, their cardboard, but you start with 50 monies. And whoever has the most money at the end of the game actually wins the game, and your money's always kept private. And so there's multiple ways to get the money on those things. One of those is the builders, like we just talked about. You can sell the green cards, let you get merchant cards, but you can sell those during the game for money if you need money during the game. So lots of little things there, but the other main way the game ends too. The last thing we should talk about, we haven't mentioned about, is the game ends when the player places his last camels. We didn't talk about camels yet. I don't think you talked about camels yet, but we all have a certain number of camels. And if you end on a tile and you've taken the last when you pull those meeples back of the last color, if there's no meeples left, you claim that tile, as in you put your camel there. I say I finished on a tile and there's 2 reds. Okay, now I'm going to take the reds and I'll take that action, but I claim that tile. So that tile has in-game points on it, ranging from 5 to 12, I think, or 15 on the blue ones. So those are just in-game points as well. But once you claim that tile, the game ends when someone has placed out their last camel, or there's no more legal moves possible. Elizabeth will tell you, I'm very much, this is a race game for me. It took her a long time to realize I went as fast as I could to claim as many spots as I could, because I'd get all 7 of my camels out and she has like 3 in her hand. She's like, oh, wow, because that's 10 to 15 points or 20 points that she couldn't get as well. So there's no hidden agenda for me. Anyone who's played with me enough knows I'm very much a racer on that. So I like assassins for that, because assassins, I can snipe other spots on the board to get more meeples off the board for that. Or I'll go heavy for viziers, because viziers can add up really big, as you said, with a multiplayer game, to be at least the first place guy. You just don't want to be last place, like you said. I rarely do builders at all, unless it just hits right. Like if the builders hit right, the blue ones that give you money for the multiplications, if it hits right, I think that's for any hardcore player. It kind of comes to that. What's fun, and I'll go a little tactical then come back, but the fun thing about the random setup of the game is you can have insane moves each round it starts. So the round is okay. Everybody, I'll step back one more time and say, we actually bid for turn order as well. The cool thing about this game, going into gameplay, I guess right now to jump into it. A cool thing about this game is every round you're bidding for turn order. So you can bid money to go first. But if I bid 2 coins, or there's a set amount you have to bid. Yeah, you can bid none. Yeah. You can bid 1, 3, 5, 8. I could bid 3, and Robbie could be like, you know what? Now remember, I'm bidding in-game points. These are points at the end of the game I'm giving away to go earlier. Robbie could outbid me and bid 5, and Elizabeth could bid 8. So I literally just spent 3 points to go last. So it's such an interesting thing that you're bidding in-game points for turn orders. But it can be amazing, because we had one particular game in which the setup was great in that there were a bunch of green meeples at one spot. And in that row of merchandise, it was like 4 different cards. And so Elizabeth had like a 35-point move. Like these games end with like 80 points or 90 points. And she had a single move. It was like 30-something points that she bid on. And granted, she maybe ended up giving her like a net of 27 because she bid 5 for that. But like, wow. That's the fun thing about the constantly changing board. The random setup and the constantly changing board means every single turn you take, the board has changed since that person before you, because it's not really worker placement, it's worker movement in a way, but we all have access to all the workers every single turn.
Yeah, I think that the bidding on the turn order, because then when you rebid on the next turn, you start the bidding in the same order as the previous turn. So if someone decides to bid 0, I think it's one of the coolest mechanics in the game is on that bidding track. Let's say Jason went first last turn and he's like, I'm looking at the board I'm seeing, and I'm just really not convinced that I see anything I want. So Jason decides to bid 0. Anyone else that bids 0 moves Jason back in the track, because there's 3 spots available at 0. So you can just jump in and you also bid 0, but you still get to go before that person, because whoever bids 0 first will be the last to go of the other folks that bid 0. So when you're assessing the board, you really do have to look to be like, what big move is out there, because the board changes so fast. When you're making that initial bid, Elizabeth's looking at that and saying, okay, I see a 32-point move on the board. I have to bid before Jason.
Yep.
He might also see that 32-point move. I've got to I got to disinterest him from that. And so she may go 5, and Jason's like, okay, if I'm thinking about the math, if I bid 8, is 3 more worth it? Because that 3 more that you purchase could actually be the nail in the coffin to you lose by 3.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, well, I got that 32-point turn, but I bid so much to get it. It's one of the most fascinating things when you play with people for the first time. I always try to make sure, it's tough because you want to showcase to new people what it's like to actually do the move. But also when the board drops, it can feel bad because you're like, oh, I'm not trying to go first to show you the easy move or whatever, but also me going first means that I'm going to get the move that I want to start the whole game. And so most often folks get trapped into this. I'll say that a lot of folks get trapped into the going for the genies first when they play for the first time, because these genies give you extra effects. If you're placing a palm tree that is traditionally 3 points, they're now, or I think maybe they're traditionally 5 points. Now they're worth 10 points. Every palm tree you have is worth 10 points. Every castle you place is worth 15 points, whatever it may be. There are little effects like that. Or you can spend one, you can spend one servant card to pull a meeple out of the bag and place it like a random meeple out of the bag. Or you can do this to move. There's all these effects of the genies. And the genies also have just straight up points that they give you at the end, which is really powerful. So certain genie effects are crazy strong. Certain genie effects are terrible. So you have to like weigh the pros and cons of that. If you are someone that loves actions, go in for the genies. And like I said, the viziers, or not the viziers, the elders that get you to the genies are also points at the end of the game. So it's not like just going for them is necessarily like you have to go in on the genie strategy. You can stop people from going in on the genie strategy because there's only a certain amount of them out there. So I love the ebb and flow of that. But like people get trapped in this genie strategy right off the bat. And almost every time that I play with people, there's a huge builder move right off the bat that's like ready and up there. And I have just watched so many games of introducing people to 5 tribes where they're like, they'll outbid me on the turn order. And then they'll go grab like 3 elders and they're like, yeah, good first go. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to go builders. And that's 25 points right off the bat. Oh, sick. Like,
oh yeah. It's so, it's definitely, you can get sucked into that for sure. Now, granted, the genies can be great too, but it's the the luck of what genies come out, because you always have 3 genies showing at any time to buy. And like I said, some are really, really good, depending on what strategy you're going for. Some are really not good, and some are like so-so. And so I would do a genie if it's the right one that pops out. One other thing to highlight we haven't talked about yet is that also on those tiles, there are additional bonuses, and I think basically highlighted it, but we didn't talk about the market cards, did we? I'm sorry, I'm sick.
We haven't really dove into the market yet.
So on the tiles too, the way you buy genies. So when you finish your move on a tile, like I said, if you claim all the meeples on there, you claim the tile, and now it's yours, and you get those in-game points. But even if you don't claim the tile, you can take the bonus action that's on there. And there's 4 different bonus actions. Robbie's kind of alluded to them. One is putting a village, which is a little wooden piece on there. That's for whoever controls that tile. 5 points in the game is the basis 5 points. There's a tile that every time someone ends there, you put a palm tree on that tile. Base is 3 points for every palm tree for who controls it. And there's a chance no one will ever control that tile either, by the way. It's just the way the game works. There's one where you buy a genie. Robbie's already referenced that. You can buy a genie with 2 elders or an elder and the fakir, which is the servant card, which you can get from the market. And the last one, which has 2 different versions of it, there's what's the term for it? It's basically the market card, small market and big market. And it's where you can, when you land there, you can spend money to now take market cards. You can take one of the small markets, you spend 3 coins to take one of the first 3 cards from the stack of cards. And the next one is the big one. You can pay 2 to pay 6 gold to take 2 of the next 6. Now, the key about the market cards are the more you have of a variety of cards, the more points you get at the game. Whatever the term is, like they increase. If you have 1 point, if you have 1 card, it's worth so many points. If you have 4 different cards, it's worth so many points. So the more you have that are different, the bigger your points can be, and they stay hidden, or they actually stay public during the game, so you can see what everybody else has. That's also what the merchants do that for you too. So there's we've touched a bunch of different strategy, but then you have the strategy of what you want your meeples to do. But you also have the strategy of where you want your final place to be because of that action. Do I need that market card of spices? Do I need that market card of bread? Do I need that market card of silk? Because that's going to give me my 6th different card, which is big points at the end. Or do I just need to claim that one because of something else? Or am I going to claim it and there's already 3 palm trees on there, 3 oases on there? And again, I come back to this over and over, but the board is different every single time, right? And I love the fact that the board's every single time, and I put it out randomly, and sometimes you could have 3 in a row, they're the same, or just dispersed throughout.
Yeah. It is the only time that Lindsay has beat me twice in this game. And both times have been, the market is set collection, truly. And so there's a major set if you get one of everything. And it's like 60 points or something
it's 60.
like that.
There's 9 different ones. So if you get one of everything, it's 60 points.
Yeah. It's a wallop at the end. And the only time Lindsay has beat me is literally the market. Like she comes out on the very end because I'm with Jason. I'm also a racer in this. I'm dropping I don't know that I've ever played a game of 5 tribes with people without the statement, wait a minute, Robbie, how many camels do you have left? That coming out of
so true.
So Jason and I would be birds of a feather here. People hate playing with us because we're both just like an assassin take out, because you can combo the assassins too. Like It's really fun of, you pick up all the assassins, so you claim that space, and then now I can move 3 tiles over, and there's only one meeple standing there, so I can kill that one meeple. Boom, I claim that one too.
2 spots in one move. Yep.
The dream, just dropping camels. So Lindsay loves the market. She loves because it's not confrontational, and she also knows that I don't do the market. So I'm only going to the market to get the servants / fakirs to power up my genies to do other stuff, and so. It is such a cool ebb and flow. Now, I will say, as a drawback to this, and I think it's important to highlight this because we talked about a lot of movement happening in the game. A drawback to this is that if you are playing and you suffer from AP or analysis paralysis, this game can feel like an actual nightmare.
Yep.
And if you are someone that struggles to play with people that have AP, this can feel like a nightmare, but you have to give forgiveness when you're playing this game, because literally every move that happens, the board state changes.
Yep.
So I can have this beautiful move of, I'm going to double combo the assassins. I'm going to scoop. I'm going to do that, but I'm 3rd in the turn order. Like I see that. So first person goes and they drop a meeple, what feels very random to them, but they drop one on a space that I was planning to take out that last meeple and get 2 camels down. Well, now that just changes my move. Like now this is not a great move. So I have to adjust. Well, then on the second person that turn, they do something else. And now it's like, okay, well, is the assassin play still there? I just have to go this direction now. You are constantly crunching and analyzing. So these rounds, this game, when it says 80 minutes, I almost believe that if you're playing with a full player count, 80 is generous. Yeah. Like I think you are leaning much more to the 2-hour time period, especially if you have first timers playing this game. So I think that while it is undoubtedly one of my favorite, the Mancala mechanic is so amazing. But man, it's very rare for me to play 5 tribes like multiple times in a row, because you're just mentally gassed at the end of it. And like I said, if you struggle with AP, this is going to be a tough one for you.
For sure. This is why I don't teach anybody in my few years of being here and having lots of new gamers. There's no one I'm going to teach it to unless they really ask to learn it, because I have enough people who are newer gamers who will just struggle on that decision point. Because I have stumped this for the last few years. To the point where I play games to play, but even new players struggle with just making a decision and going. That's what's fun with when Jimmy, Hunter's brother, and his wife came over and played. They've played a few times, and Anna's like, I was going to do whatever. I'm like, you're my favorite kind of new player. You're just going to do it, and it doesn't matter. And she won quacks. She goes, I don't know how I won, but I just won quacks. I'm like, exactly, right? Because she was just doing it and taking the actions, and then as you learn it as you go. And I don't blame people for taking their time, right? It's not me criticizing them, because I totally understand it, because I played so many games. I'm at this point, I'm playing just for the fun of it, and seeing what I can do. But you're dead on. Like, even I will have 3 or 4 moves in my head, but if I'm 3rd or 4th in turn order, I'm like, by the time it's to me, I'm like, there's almost no point in looking, because it'll actually cause more stress. Even to me, who's a fast player, I'm like, don't look at it. Okay, good, let's go. Because the biggest complaint we have about AP players is like, okay, you've had 10 minutes, think about your turn, now take your turn. But the board has changed 3 times between your last turn. So the grace, you are correct in that you need to give grace in this game if you're going to play it with people who struggle with decision making in games like this. This is definitely not their fault. Some games, absolutely. I'll do the analysis and disc off. If your disc lands in the middle of the fairway, you don't need to think about that next shot. You should know what the next shot's going to be. Let's be clear. Like maybe if the wind's picking up, okay, you're debating about how much stable you want. You're thinking too long about that, right? Lots of games the AP people struggle with. I'm like, you don't really need to think about this. This is every turn you're like behind 12 trees. And you're trying to decide what is the best line. It's not that hard, but it's the principle of that. Even for me, if it's a 2-player game, which we'll talk about uniqueness 2-player in a second, in a 3 or 4-player game, because it can change so much, like even I have to like, okay, be patient with it because what I want to do changes and I got to look at the board. Speaking of the 2-player games, for those who remember, I'm pretty certain this was on your top 10 2-player list. Was the 5 Tribes on yours? Or I said, I think it may.
I can't remember. It may have an honorable.
It may have made honorable mention for me. Like it's a multiplayer game that I love at 2-player, and here's why: it's such a cool thing, and I've never seen this in any other multiplayer game that I own. So if you play multiplayer in 5 Tribes, you're actually controlling. You get 2 turns per round, so you're basically controlling 2 turn order markers. So in a 3-player game, you each have your turn order marker, and that's how you set your bids. But in a 2-player game, you have more camels to play with. I forgot what the number is, but it's more than your standard camels, and you're actually taking 2 turns per round. But the bidding for that is so unique because, as Robbie said, so if you won the bid last time and you go first, that means also you're going to do the first bid next time. But then, like, do I go 0 right away? Because you could force your opponent to have to pay $1. Someone every single time in a 2-player game is going to have to spend $1 to turn. Because if I go 0, then 0, and Elizabeth goes 0, well, she's got to spend 1 anyway. And so the cool thing about that is you can take 2 turns in a row, or you could go first and last in a round, and someone else goes 2 turns in a row, or you can go back and forth and end the round. I love that so much. This game is amazing at 2 players because the board stays exactly the same. You don't change the board. You just have more, you have more agency because you're taking more actions on it, and it's just y'all 2 playing, but you're taking 2 turns each time. And we love it at 2 players. I haven't played it in a while because we played it so much. I even looked at BG stats. We've only played it twice, and we haven't played it in like over 2 years. But man, I love 5 Tribes. And I love the fact that at 2 players, there's so many multiplayer games that are okay at 2 players. But this at 2 players is amazing.
Yeah. At 2 players, I very much, my biggest issue, and I've talked about this in several games that we reviewed, if there's a bidding mechanic, especially if that money creates points, I will lose that game so often because I like the agency of going first. I like to know what I'm going to do. And also, I don't have to worry about AP because I'm going to do my move.
Yep.
And then just let you guys do your thing. That is so simple. In 2-player games, that is so difficult because I'm like, and Lindsay traps me into this quite often. She will try to bid in a place to like force me to have to like, she'll take the 3 spot and the 1 spot. And so I'm like, okay, those are back to back. So now I either have to go 8-5, so I'm spending 13 on this turn, or I go 0-0 and I just have to get whatever she gives me. I think I'm going 13 every time. And so I spend that, but then it also, from loving the agency, the wombo combo that you can do. Like I've had games where I go 4 camels in 1 turn because of the fact, or like 1 round, because I can go back to back. And so it's like, okay, I'm basically just going to empty that half of the board. Yeah. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. And so then you're dropping the pieces, you're doing all that. It is really amazing what all you can accomplish in the side to side. So much so that I have a really hard time deciding, like, do I prefer this at 4 or do I prefer this with multiplayer? I think I would go so far as to say 3 is my least favorite count.
Yeah.
Like I like the board to feel full.
Yep.
At 3, it's just this weird balance on the bidding track of one person's going to get the benefit every time. And
you could always go 0 every single time for sure. Not that initially would happen because as the game goes, you want to bid to go first. But that's but I agree. Like 2-player is like a 4-player game because you're taking 2 turns per round and you're bidding 4 spots. but I agree. I would prefer it either at 2 or at 4 with people who aren't playing really slow. At this point in my life, I just don't like sitting there through long turns for sure. What's funny about you saying you will bid the money, you always lose, or you'll always spend your points to go. I'm the opposite. My arrogance is so high. I'm like, you know what? I'll go last and I'm still going to beat you. Watch this right now. Hold my meeple. Here we go. And that's the way I am with 5 tribes. Cause Liz and I played enough that I bid some, but like more often than not, she knows I'm going to go 0 no matter. Like it's a given. I'm just going to bid 0 and I'm going to see what I can do. Cause I'm going to prove that I can outthink you. And she struggles too because Liz is a very good gamer. Let's be clear. Right. But Ryder and I, unsurprisingly, and you would be the same, I can look at a board and see a move much quicker. The base board is just 3 per, but as the game goes, and again, once you play it, you can see it more. Sometimes a tile will have like 6 or 7 meeples. And so if it has 7 meeples, you're going out 7 spots. And you got to think about what you want to do and where you want to leave meeples, how you can do a big combo, wombo, whatever. And I can see those very quick. I'm like, oh, I got that one. And then I'm like, well, okay, well, if she takes that one, there's one on the other side of the board she can't get, so I'm good, right? If you have 4 different people, they can definitely mess with it for sure. But if it's just 3 people or 2 people, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go second. I see that quicker than Elizabeth does because in the truest sense, this is a puzzle game. When you think about it, it's a puzzle. No, it's not necessarily a traditional puzzle in that you're putting pieces together, but it's a puzzle in that the design is constantly changing. And you are putting pieces, but sometimes you're putting a piece there, sometimes you're putting a piece there, and you're figuring it out here and you're going there. Love that challenge of it for certain. And I love at the end, it slows down. You're like, okay, I could do this. I got 1 more move or 2 more moves. Because I kind of glanced over it earlier, but another way the game ends is if there are no more legal moves. As in, there's no way you can end on a spot, right? Because the number of tiles, because the number of meeples are there. We've most of the time, because I race in 2-player games, we never end that way. It's 99% of the time we end because I get all my camels out. 4-player games, I've had plenty of games that finish where there's no legal moves because you have enough people who are manipulating the board to keep you from racing out all your camels. Now, I've finished plenty of times with my camels all out, but plenty of times I haven't. And was like, oh, wow, this is going to be, well, if they do this, there's 3 more moves, but there's 2. Okay, cool. I love that puzzle side of the end of the game and just seeing how it goes. And that's when, okay, I may have to bid on the last round because I need 1 more move for something.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, that is like, that's a perfectly valid strategy on the last round of like, I actually am going to get it. Like looking at the board state, there basically is 1 legal move left. So you bid however much to make sure you get that last move. Yep. But it may not be worth it depending on how big that last move is. So like, there's just this ebb and flow. Like Jason saying he always bids 0. I probably got over 30 games of 5 tribes logged. And like, cause we are so deep into our like score sheets, cause there's paper score sheets in there. Like you can actually see as you tear off like the little, rubbery back of the like sketch pad.
Yeah. You can see how many we've played the same way. Like I've kept all mine. Yeah. I have a ton here.
And so I think I probably am with 30 games played, 30 plus. I'm probably under 20 the number of times that I have bid 0. Like I am always shoveling out coins. So, and I love this game so much. Let's talk about production and then we'll jump into cookie scale if that works for you, Jason. I feel like it's a game. It's so classic and there's so many memories wrapped up in it that like, we have to check ourselves on this because we can end up with a really long episode just because of the stories and I remember when I pulled this move off, things like that. Yeah. From the production side, I will say it's on a pricier side than games we've covered in the past for good reason. There are 90 wood meeples in this game. And so the price is just automatically going to be a little higher. The cardboard pieces in terms of the tiles and the bidding track and even the quality of the cards of the genie cards, really high quality cards. The production is crazy high on this. And so it comes in at $60. I think realistically that price makes sense to me. Like I don't really push back on it and think, oh, that is too pricey for a game. It makes sense. Like when you just play it, if there was a set of cards that I'm like, the cheapest part of the game to me would be the market cards.
Yeah.
and it's because they're so small.
Yeah.
They're probably the exact same like thickness as the genie cards, but because the genie cards are larger, it doesn't feel that bad. Our market cards are in not a good shape because we have shuffled them so many times, and you're just touching them a lot. Like the market cards leave a little bit to be desired, but everything else, even the turn order track, like the bidding pieces, the camels, the palm trees, the villages, it's all such nice components.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's 90, like I said, it's 90 meeples. That's a lot of wood. And then we didn't say it, but the little palaces and palm trees are all wood, like high quality wood, bigger than the meeple. Like they're twice, 2 to 3 the size of the meeple. Lots of cardboard, lots of really good art. And that $60 is like the MSRP. So because Five Tribes comes in and out of production. So right now the price is 60. But if a big reproduction comes of it out, or if a big printing of it comes out, you'll be able to find it in that lower level. It's just as of today, you can find it in some of the game stores online for like $50 something, other places $60 something. So it's in that range. But like for a base price that is high, but because of all what you get in there, it makes sense. And because you're using these meeples the entire game. In a lot of games where you have meeples, you may place it out and it sits there the entire game. Like Carcassonne, you're going to put one out and maybe put another one out. You pull it back. This, you're literally touching them every single time. And you can't tell the difference. I mean, it may sound silly, but they're really good quality because mine look brand new. And I played them a ton of times for certain.
The camels are also wood, right?
Yeah, the camels wood as well. Yeah, the camels are wood. Yeah, wow, the amount of wood in this game. That's true. Like there's hundreds of pieces of wood.
60 is such a it has to be close to 150 pieces. It feels like of just straight like wooden components of the game. It's a heavy box. Yep. Like it is straight up like just getting it's a heavy box. But Jason, let's talk cookies. Yep. Unless you got more thoughts.
No, that's good. This is I mean. It's so if I look at my BGG rating, it should be pretty clear what so BGG rating has a 1 to 10 star level.
Okay.
And so if you looked at my BGG rating, you're like, well, I know what you're going to do, right? I'm going to give a kind of half caveat a little bit based on what we said earlier, based on the player count. So without doubt, this is easy a double doozy for me, for sure. I love this game. I love the puzzle. I love the challenge of doing that every single time. I love the fact that if I want to go with elders and djinns this game, I can try just to see. If I want to go with the viziers this game, which I often do, I can see. If I want to go with the marketplace, I could see. I do the assassins a lot, but I don't ever snipe anybody's characters. I just snipe on the board because it's the race, like you talked about, taking 2 tiles on 1 move. It's always exciting, but it's a double doozy for me. Mostly the history of playing it at max player count or 2 players for sure, because it changes up the dynamic of the game. It makes the fullness of the game come out. It doesn't change up the dynamic. It makes the fullness of the game come out when you play with that player count. Not that 3 is bad, but you can kind of do your own thing just enough. Whereas if everybody's taking a turn, and then if you add one of the expansions that take you to 5 players, you do add more tiles for that 5 players, and you add some other abilities. But the scoring gets way high at that point because you're well over 200 points for a lot of those games. So it's a no-brainer. 5 Tribes. It's the one that it's my most favorite one to say, you know what? Every time I think about 5 Tribes, I don't know why I don't play it more, because I love 5 Tribes.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try to like hide it. It is another double doozy because y'all, I just have if I have bad memories of this, it is because what a fool I am. I overbid to do what I thought, but I'm completely okay with that because from a gameplay perspective, you know what? I lost, but I still got to do what I wanted to do. Like I got to play the game that I wanted to play it, and I got to do this really cool combo. Jason talks about it doesn't snipe people. I would say half of my assassins easily are used to control the vizier game, because 9 times out of 10, I'm grabbing viziers and I'm sitting there looking at my opponents, and I wait till that last vizier comes off the table. And usually assassins, like if you're not in the racing strategy, assassins get left on the board for like a good amount of time because they're like, well, I just don't really know what I want to take out. Okay. And I'll watch that last vizier get pulled, and then I just start dropping people's viziers because then it's like, oh, you thought you were going to get 20 points because you had more viziers. You were in second place for viziers. Well, what if I just take out that one and now you are all tied? Like you're all at the same level. And then I just throw my hands back and let the chaos continue. This is where I knew the Slytherin moment was going to come out of I get them all tied, and then I'll just leave a few assassins out there just for the like, are you going to do it? Are you going to go take out their vizier? Because that gets you points.
Right.
Like, that's not a bad move. And then you can't look at me and be like, well, Robbie was the one killing all of it. Whoa. Let's back up here, buddy. Back up here. Real talk at the table. You can tell that's not even rehearsed. That is 100% a situation that has occurred. It's fantastic. So I'm here for the memories. I'm here for the Mancala effect. I'm here for the replayability. And like Jason said, this is one of the few games. There are lots of games that when I introduce new people to it, it's like, okay, I'm going to try a new strategy in this game, but I know that I'm probably not going to win because there are clear strategies that help you succeed here. And I can have fun trying the strategy, whatever. In 5 tribes, based on the initial layout of the board, but also just how you play the game, every single tribe is a legitimate way to win the game. Like, there are no weak tribes. The builders are the least, like, wow, I would say, out of all of them, because it's just I collect them and I get huge points for blue. Awesome. Okay, cool. But, like, if people ignore the builders, you can go crazy on the builders. If people ignore the market, you can go crazy on the market. Before people look up, they can blink and you have 6 viziers sitting in front of you. And you're like, awesome, I win, like on viziers. So it's just really, really cool how the game is so well balanced. I can't come up with negative things other than the fact that I lose a lot.
My only negative thing is not even a negative thing, but we talked about it, is that play can be slow for certain players because it's the nature of the game. And that's just an observation. If there's any, and that's how good of the game is. Like, the only critique I have is that because of the funness of the game, the board changes every turn. So slower players are going to play slow. I mean, that's almost more, it's more an observation because you can't really change that. The nature of this game, there's literally nothing you can do to change that. That's the way this game plays. So if I had anything negative, it's more the observation. Just be ready. If you have slower players, it's going to take a little bit longer. But the board's constantly changing. So, I mean, there's a fun part of that because they're about to change the board before your turn as well.
Yeah. It's very, have we covered Flamecraft?
Yeah, we covered Flamecraft.
As in okay.
Yeah.
It very much reminds me of another type of version of Flamecraft in terms of the comboing. It's not, you don't do as big of combos as you do in Flamecraft. Like, it's not like when we're in the later stages of the game, I'm going to like move this to this shop. I'm going to fire these 3 dragons and then I'm going to get the enchantment and like, it's not that level, but because you're getting there, sitting there dropping all of the pieces and you're doing that, like, your turn feels worth it when it arrives. So, like, yes, the wait can be long, but I really do feel like the turns mean something. Like, you're very rarely going to get to your turn and be like, oh, the best option was just to pick up these 3 meeples and go boom, boom, boom. And now I'm like, I got 10 points for builders. All right, cool. Like, there's always something to do if you can see it and you can have that. And I think that some people will love this game for that. Like Jason said, our brains kind of work in that way. And other people's don't. And that's okay. Maybe it's not a game that jumps to the table for you, but if you like the combo, if you like really abstract ways of looking at moving pieces, I think 5 Tribes is a must get for your collection. It's a classic. For it to be 10 years old and still be in the BGG top 100, that's incredible. So, Jason, any final thoughts to wrap it up?
No, man, that was good. It's unsurprising that we were both double doozies because of we've talked about it enough for sure as a game we love. And I think it's a good recommendation.
Come on. Well, we hope you guys enjoy. We will, between now and the next episode, we'll have played together. So we'll have some games that'll be a good time. Excited to see, once again, if you ever have games that you're like, hey, I would love to see y'all cover this, feel free to throw them our way. We obviously aren't going to like say absolutely if you put it in the comments, we would love to we're going to cover it, but always looking for ideas, always looking for games that you're like, hey, I've heard about this game, or I've heard this one's pretty popular, or things like that. We'd love to cover it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for supporting and listening to the podcast, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks for episode 32.